All right,
Thanks, Don.
consideration of adopting rules of procedure for council committees. Dick? Mike?
Yeah, I think it's Mike on the technical side. Well, let me just say that, again, I sort of started this dialogue as I realized that out in these various committees that we've often encouraged non-council members to chair those meetings, and they're not always familiar with how we ought to proceed, and particularly it's become problematical at the city school meetings where we've got somebody from the school board or us chairing. So I just thought we ought to, there's a time for us to maybe dust off the rules and see what we want to do, whether we want to standardize it for all committees, kind of like it is now, and consider some of these things that Mike has in his resolution. So,
So you, in your packet, you have a copy of the rules that were actually provided to you at the last council meeting. Since that time, I've had some additional comments come in from Vice Mayor Atkin, so I have a little revision here that I'll hand out to you in a half second. It's very, very minor, and it's just really a matter of adding a little bit of language and then moving some language from one section into another. So I'll walk you through that in a moment, but let me hand this out first.
okay, and Mike, just before you do that, I'm looking, and I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to talk to you about this sooner, but on your memo, your cover memo for this meeting, dated April 1st? Yes. I'm sorry. It's the March 18th memo.
Yes. Okay.
If you go to page 2, that it seems to start with just in the middle of a sentence. And I was trying to look back on the stuff we had before to see if I could find out what's missing, but it seems that
There appears to be a page missing.
is that what it is?
Yeah, I believe so.
I noticed that.
But is there anything there we need to be concerned about in terms of what you have kind of set forward for the potential rule changes? Okay, I just found my March 18th. Yeah, you're exactly right. Page 2 is missing.
I don't have page 2 in mine either.
Yeah.
Does it matter?
No, I mean, the real meat of
I
it
don't-
before
Are you
you
gonna
are
hand
the
out or
rules.
not?
Well, I was...
I don't think it does. As I look at it, and I'll leave this up here for you to look at when you get a chance. Again,
Sure.
I'm sorry, I really
no
just
problem.
noticed that. I didn't get a chance to
I
talk
just
to you
noticed
about
that myself.
You gave it to me earlier. Thank you, Michael.
So this is the one we're going to be working from now, right? This one?
I do have extra copies for all those in the crowd that want to... Essentially, the revision that is before you on page 2, section 2.9, I just grabbed some language that was previously in section 5.2, which is on page 6 of 7, and you'll see I've stricken out the language on page 6 of 7. I struck out 5.2 and sort of took part of it and stuck it into 2.9, which is the presiding officer shall preserve strict order and decorum, shall prevent threatening, bullying, or disruptive verbal attacks on the council, committee members, staff, and/or citizens, confine debate to the item under discussion, and discourage demonstrations before the council committee, such as applauding or booing. And then, likewise, under 211, provided that upon instructions by the presiding officer, the chief of police or his or her designee may be called for the purpose of removing persons who are disruptive. So that's the extent of the change from what I had was in your packet.
So then we need to go back to the other one to show the underlying changes in it, like starting at 2.12 is where, in the memo for today's meeting, before the one you just handed out, that's underlined with the suggested changes.
Correct.
We need to go back to that one.
Well, that, if you want to see the changes that
Right.
had been presented from the prior draft.
Right.
I'm confusing with drafts. But the one that I just handed to you just this moment incorporates all those additions and deletions. It just doesn't show them as
Okay.
as underlined or stricken out. Essentially, these are just some proposed rules that were crafted using your council rules of procedure as the bases, and then took those and sort of further refined them for retaining, bits and pieces of it that I think are relevant to the operation of the committees that the council has created. In particular, it appeared to be that some of the issues that were arising were around the rights of the public in relation to, their opportunity to speak on particular agenda items or under public comment items. And so these rules get into a little bit more detail than what you would normally find in yours about sort of the process of running the meeting for sort of provide guidance for the presiding officers who, as Councilmember Cassis suggested earlier, are, they're people that are volunteers from the community. They don't necessarily have a lot of experience of running meetings, and so it was kind of drafted in a sense to provide them hopefully a little bit of guidance how to handle that. And it's suggested that there be initially time limits of 2 minutes for comment on agenda items, and a limitation of a minute to provide comment under the general guise of public comments. And I would part of the reason behind them being a little bit more restrictive than the rules that you have here is that these committees, they're topically focused into sort of narrower areas. Again, you're trying to provide, trying to get people to participate into these committees, so you don't want them to run on for hours on end, otherwise they lose interest. So we also have that the committee initially, meeting length is limited to 2 hours, and that's why also we're sort of constricting the length of public comment. Let's see. What was your comment here, Charlie?
Mike, when you say limited to 2 hours, that means suppose they go longer. I mean, they can't go longer?
Well, no, you can go long. Again, it was just initially setting it 2 hours. Again, likewise, as the council has here, you limit the end date, or the end time rather, for your meetings here at 11:30. And if you get to that point and you want to go forward, you can vote to do so. So that they can do the same as well.
I have some language changes.
All right, I had a couple questions. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So if we could comment on these now, I have a couple of questions and suggestions. Anywhere that it says a council committee, I'd like to replace that with a city committee. Semantics matter, and the committees aren't here. The committees are here to conduct city business, and the focus stays on the city and the business of the city, and not on the individuals that comprise the council.
Yeah, but their purpose is to advise the council, and that's why they're council committees.
So, well, that's just one suggestion. If you don't like that, then
Why
that's
don't we
okay.
deal with these as they go, so we don't have to come back
Please.
to them? So do you want to make a motion on that?
Yeah, I'll move that we change council committees to city committees. Okay, well, that feels for lack of a
I
second.
don't think that's a good idea, because the committees advise the council, and the
That's
council
right.
appoints the
Okay.
members, so...
Then-
Yeah, I agree with you.
Then
too.
under 2.6, city manager, or it should say his or her designee if we keep that in there.
Correct.
But I think, I don't know whether there's something inherent in a council manager form of government that it says the city manager is responsible for going to everything in the city unless they designate something. So I'm not exactly sure why we have that. Why don't we just say every council committee shall have the appropriate staff
Much better,
members.
much better.
Staffing that committee.
Yes,
Well,
staff.
I mean, my view of it is that the city manager is responsible to the council to staff him, and it's his or her decision as to whom
Oh,
he or
so
she
like in the
designates.
Public
So, I
Art
mean,
Committee, he designates.
we exchanged emails here. It's not that the city manager is going to go to everyone, and in fact, most of these committees are not attended by the
Right.
city manager,
exactly.
But
he
he's
has designated
Yeah.
staff, and
language is
there is the
there.
roster of committees
I think
that
it's actually
does.
department heads that designate which people are going to staff committees.
Well, that's always,
Department
that
heads.
may be functionally correct, but it's always at the discretion of the city manager as to whether he wants that individual to in fact do so.
The buck
And-
stops with the city manager.
Yeah,
Well,
I think we're getting to the same point. It's not intended to force Pat to go to every meeting, but certainly you want to have it staff, and he'll appropriately direct staff to do that.
Then, all right, so that's going nowhere. Then on page 4, 5.1B, and this appears in a few other places, each person desiring to address the council committee on an agenda item shall approach the podium if one exists or otherwise. I would like to, most committees happen around a table, there isn't a podium, and that's just arcane kind of language.
Sure.
So I would like to delete the phrase, so it just says, each person desiring to address the council committee on an agenda item shall signal their desire to address the committee.
Okay?
I think that's good.
And that occurs in a few other places.
Yes,
I'll
it
support
does.
Okay.
If that's a motion.
Yeah, I move that.
Okay, I'd go along with
No
that.
problem.
Okay, and then on page 5 of 7.2, B2, again, there's that approaching the podium business, where that has to be cleaned up a little bit. But on the third line, those members of the public that have, I would say who have signaled their desire.
I'm sorry, I lost you. Where are you now?
Page 5 of 7.2
Correct?
at the top.
Oh, yeah.
Just change that to who. And then,
I'm good with that. If that's a motion, I'll second that.
yeah,
I'm okay with that.
and then under disruptive behavior, which is page 6 of 7, I guess that's what you just struck. You just eliminated that in the new version, right?
Correct.
Okay, never
Well,
mind. I was gonna, that's been deleted, but I was gonna offer that perhaps we should define our terms there. But that's no longer moot. That's a moot point now. So anyway, those are my comments.
Hey, well,
Mayor
okay,
Buchanan,
I just wanted to add, with preservation of order now, like with John and I in the Transportation Committee.
what now?
Well, I just want to get some clarification here. Now, when John and I were on the Transportation Committee, there were many times when I wanted to limit his comments, and he didn't want to limit his comments. And I didn't feel that I had any control of the meeting at that point. So what is the authority of the chair if that kind of situation develops?
Well, that's an interesting one, since there's only two members of there's only two committee members. There's yourself and Councilmember Fricke, and so the chair has the ability to make a rule that says, okay, your time is limited to 2 minutes. You have 2 more minutes, Councilmember Fricke. And Councilmember Fricke, as a member, has the right to sort of challenge your ruling. Shall the presiding officer's rule be upheld? And then it's a vote between the two of you.
It's a
and
tie
so It's
vote.
a tie vote, and so I think your ruling is sustained because it's not overturned. So that's kind of a curious situation where you have that result because you only have 2 committee members on that committee.
Okay.
I have some items.
Dick,
Go
yeah,
go
go
ahead, Nora.
I have an item, and I really am very hesitant to bring this forward because throughout the years, these committees have done an enormous amount of work for the city of Emeryville, and for the most part, they have been able to operate in a very responsible and civil manner. Unfortunately, the situation has changed. That's one of the reasons why we have to have these rules. One of the problems that arises, as Ruth says, most of these committees meet around a table. And when you have a person who is not a member of the committee sitting at the table, which happens at the transportation, not transportation, the bike ped committee, the city school committee, some of the other committees, there arises a confusion as to who is a member of the committee and who is not. I think it's important that only members of the committee sit at the table and the other people have seating away from where the committee table is. It's become very confusing, especially for the members of the committee, because they don't know when someone who's sitting at the table is going on and on and on, is not a member of the committee and doesn't really have standing to be assuming that role.
Well,
How do we handle
Sadly, I
that?
agree that we've got to do that. I wish we
We have
didn't,
to do
but-
that.
I mean, I could maybe, rather than trying to create rules to deal with that, maybe a simple thing of providing, like the council has here, you have your name tags, and maybe what we should do is have the person who's in charge of that particular committee, the staff person, the city manager, he'll be making a bunch of signs that provide the individual's name, and it's,
No,
I
I'd like to
don't
see
think-
something that says
I don't
only
think that goes
design-
far enough.
No,
I
only
mean, I like to
designated
be,
members.
it's nice to invite everybody to the table, but when people take advantage of that, and that's what's happening, then we've got to fix it. The other, I mean, yeah,
well,
the
then
name
you're
tags would let
talking
you know.
about configurations of the space down there.
No, you just say
for-
only designated members of the committee sit in the, at the committee table.
Well, I'm
And
thinking
then
like
and then you have extra
downstairs.
chairs for the
Yeah.
audience.
I'm thinking like downstairs when you hold committee meetings and there's that big, you sort
Right.
of push 3 or 4 tables together and
Right.
everybody's sitting around. So it sounds like we're going to now only make that, maybe it's only 4 or 3
Well,
tables or 2,
Well,
so
when the
that just
staff
the
sets up
committee
the
is around.
tables,
Right.
It should be how many people are at the committee, and that should be all the chairs that are there.
There's-
And
there's
staff
always-
also,
There's
right?
al-
And,
And the staff of the committee.
There's always chairs for the audience downstairs. I mean, I'm on a lot of.
No, I'm
committees
just
that meet
saying
down there.
if you have a very large setup, you got 4 tables and
Yeah,
you got a very
yeah.
small committee
Oh,
and
right,
staff,
right. We
they're
should
going to be
reconfigure.
inclined to come sit at the
Well, that's a
at the
staff
table.
responsibility when they set up the meeting.
Well, we will try to do that sort of fix for these meetings
Language.
to see how that
frankly,
happens.
It's part of the reason why I push so hard to get the Coke machine, noisy machine
Sure.
out of there and get a better sound system so that when we do have people in the audience, they can hear what's going on. Because particularly for committees that sit in the square, the folks in the audience are going to
Correct.
be sitting
Right.
behind somebody's back, and they need to be able to hear what they're saying, so.
Well, I think what
I agree
we should
with-
try to do is maybe just trying to address those by
Yeah.
just the way we manage those
Okay.
meetings.
So Nora's motion, my second, and.
Oh, Charlie.
If I just make a suggestion, an observation. I think that works in the garden level. Up here in the second floor conference room in the new building, when there are committee meetings in there, it's a little problematic for people to be sitting back from the table because, it's such a confined room. But perhaps rather than making it an absolute rule, there could be something in the rules that says that the chair of the committee may establish a rule
That's
that
much
only
better.
committee members and staff can sit at the table, depending on the circumstances
Well,
or
but
something.
then what I'd like to see happen there is that there be a physical separation. I don't mean breaking the table, but we could say we're going to put the committee and staff down at this end, and then there's some empty chairs at the other end, so that people understand when someone's talking, is that a voting member talking? Is it a
Right.
member from the public?
Correct.
And if these problems go away, we can always go back to being casual, but I don't think they're going to.
Yeah.
I have one more comment that Charlie Bryant pointed out. It's under the discussion of quorum, which is on the very first page. As you're aware, we have various committees that are just comprised of 2 council members, and it provides that a quorum for council committees with 3 or fewer members, a quorum shall consist of at least 2/3. So I think what we'll need to do, assuming the council wants to allow for those types of committees to move forward with only just 1 council member present, we'll just need to add some
Absolutely.
language to clarify that.
Well, I, for one, would put staff back on the committees, but I know that that may not be the majority view.
Let's go with what we have here.
Yeah. Okay,
Just
so-
make a quorum be a half.
Are you going to give a training session?
I'm sorry?
You're going to give a training session to the committee heads?
Well, we had talked about that internally. That's something we can do if the council, I think it would be helpful to some of the, just to the presiding officer of each of these committees and try and set up some time with them to walk through these rules with them.
King, I'd like to bring up one question here that I think I'd like to see clarified that's bothered me for many years.
Sure.
And that's the idea of these substitute motions, because I think we mishandle substitute motions. If you nominate somebody to serve on a committee, for example, and you get a second, I don't think it's appropriate to have a substitute motion to nominate somebody else, because that's the same item. You may have a substitute motion to table it, move the meeting to another location, or do something else, but when you make a nomination to serve, or when anybody makes a nomination for appointments and someone seconds it, it's not appropriate to have a substitute motion and then entertain somebody else. I've always felt that that's not correct.
No, I don't agree with you, Ken.
No, I don't
So I
either.
just wanted to
That's
see,
perfectly appropriate.
I just
Well,
wanted to
I
see
just-
under Robert's rules, or if you could just make a memo on
You
that.
always do a substitute, though.
Yeah, I can provide you a copy of Robert's
Yeah,
Rules of
it's-
Order on
Yeah,
that.
just get, some opinion, because I've never seen that done anywhere else, and I just don't think that that's part of the
We're just less polite.
appropriate, or Robert's rules.
How do we move forward
Wait,
with
I
this?
have
Oh,
some things.
okay.
So if I could get on item 4.1,
What page are you on?
page 3 of 7.
Correct.
What I'm trying to just go through is a couple things that are kind of hot buttons, and I specifically want to get to item 5, public comment. Do we, as a council, think that public comment ought to be at the end, as is suggested here, or should
No.
it be at the beginning as we have our council meetings?
I think it should be in the beginning. People that attend these meetings don't want to sit through all this stuff to
Yeah, I agree with you.
As long as you have a 2-minute limit,
3-minute.
or
No,
whatever.
Well, we're going to get to that in a second.
right,
So-
all right.
So where do we want to move it then? Would
I
that
would
be?
put it as item 2.
Yeah,
Item
good.
Before the agenda does?
Correct.
Okay, so item 2, okay. So then, we're going to get to these timing things. If we go to page 5 of 7, item 3, this is the first place we see where we're deciding the minutes.
All
Do we
right.
want it to be 2 or 3? So right now, we're talking about, we're under,
This is when you have a
this is under
public
agenda
member
items?
commenting on an agenda item. Now, and again, I mean, this is just, we're just setting up initially as 2. The presiding, the chair can further
When I was on the
revise that.
Sorry, I'm under the weather here. When I was on the Transportation Committee, sometimes it took, like if someone came forward wanting to have something installed or a curb painted a different color or something, sometimes it took more than 2 minutes to lay out the argument about why they were asking for it.
Yeah, but he's saying the chair has the discretion to change that. He's just saying it's a basic rule in the absence of anything else that it's 2 minutes.
Yeah, and I always think that there's a little bit of a difference between somebody just coming and making a general comment and somebody coming with a
Ranting.
proposal,
As an
no,
applicant.
with a proposal that they're asking the committee to adopt.
Yeah.
To me, it's like the developer coming forward
An
with
application.
plans. You give them more time. I mean, I'm okay with
Well,
that.
it's at the discretion of the
Right,
presiding
right.
officer.
So should we leave that at 2?
Yeah, and then
I
the
think it's fine.
Okay. So
I mean,
if we
and,
flip-
also, I mean, you could set it at 3 if you felt more comfortable, because even at 2, the presiding officer could say, listen, we got a lot of stuff going on here, see a lot of people want to comment, you get 1 minute.
Now,
I
if this is to the
suggest
council,
we-
if this applies to the council meetings, I'd say it should be 3 and 2 for the committees.
But
Okay.
let's leave 2 for committees. These are committee rules.
All right.
So let's stick with 2, if everybody's
Moving
okay.
along.
Okay, going to the next page, 6 of 7, item 3, we've got another 2-minute thing. I just wanted to be sure everybody's okay with that. And now we're to the public comment period, the thing at the beginning, as opposed to agenda, which we just talked about. So I'm good with the 2 if everybody else is.
Absolutely, it still had, the presiding officer still has the discretion.
So in order to do this now, I think it's necessary at each meeting for for the city to provide a timer or clock, because
Well, that's, I mean, the other part is to equip the people running these meetings with the tools to
Right.
be able to enforce them.
Exactly.
And I'd specifically like to say, I went to the Albany Council meeting last week, and they have a nice clock where everybody in the audience can see how much time is left, as well as the speaker, and that's what I think we need here. I think we need, so the speaker knows what their time is, so people in the audience can see it. I think would be well worth the investment.
I
So-
think that's a great idea. We got to pursue doing that without ruining the room, though.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, and then going down to the next one, it's on the same page, item D2. We're still on page 6 of 7.
Correct.
This is if somebody wants to comment, just, I didn't even realize there was this comment opportunity, but for example, if we're at the stage of the meeting where we're making our general comments at the end, if somebody wants to comment on that, Mike said that they can be allowed, and
Right.
that should be limited to a minute.
Why don't you leave that at the discretion of the chair? I mean, if somebody's going to let one person speak, he has to let everybody speak, or she has to. But
I think that because of the nature of where we are in the meeting, the one, going down to 1 minute makes sense, and it's all at the discretion of the chair.
Right.
all right.
Okay, and I think that that's the last of that's the last of the ones that I just wanted to bring to everybody's attention.
Okay.
So we need to, like you say, we need to make sure that the staff at these committees, and when this gets done, hands them out, and then staff should always have a copy, a little binder or something at these meetings, that if there's a question about the rule, it can be looked at.
It wouldn't hurt to post them, in a room. I mean, if you posted them, then they would be right there all the time. And
If there's a place to do that, I mean, I think down in the garden room, I'm not sure where we want to do that.
Well, I'm sure if we got creative, we might find a place.
Yeah. And my last question in this area is just to ask you, Mike, what your advice would be is how we proceed with the city school committee, because we don't get to make all the rules. It's a joint situation.
Well, I think I provided you a draft.
Yeah.
I think they're very similar to, to
Right.
what we have here. This set has sort of morphed a little bit since what I gave you then. I could go back and look at that and sort of
Plug this in.
plug the stuff that we added here into those and ship those back to you guys again. I'll bet that nobody's looked at them.
Yeah. Well,
And-
Say
and
that
it's,
again, Michael?
other than present company, obviously.
All right.
But, bring those back to the committee
Okay.
again and just keep pushing on it and see if they want to adopt it.
Okay, if you could do that, put those changes in, and
Sure.
not for this week's meeting, because you probably don't have time to do that between now
Okay.
and Thursday, but if you could for the first meeting in May, if you could come
Okay.
back to the, and it's always the first Thursday, if you could come back to city school one time, I'd appreciate that.
Sure.
And then the committee can decide how they want to go. What I would think is going to happen is that.
Do you know what date, I'm sorry, what date in May?
I don't know what the date, it's whatever the first Thursday is.
Is that May 1st, I think? May 1st? Okay, thank you.
Anyway, that's it. That's all we need to do with it.
Where are we with this? Are we voting tonight on approving
There is
these?
a resolution, yes.
Okay.
Approval.
With the
Second.
changes,
With
right?
the changes?
With the changes.
And call the roll, please.
Councilmember Davis,
Aye.
Councilmember Fricke,
Aye.
Councilmember Cassis,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Atkin,
Aye.
Mayor Bukowski.
Aye.
And I'd like to, Mike, just make a special point of thanking you for, without being
problem.
asked, coming to the last city school meeting
No, no
with the
problem.
draft to try to deal with it, because everybody's kind of scratching their head, so thanks for being
Okay.
proactive.
Communications report.